That's Mary Marst, isn't it?
Her reputation preceded her, didn't it?
Well, it isn't every day a spoiled heiress becomes the acting CEO of an international hotel conglomerate.
That's true. The Marst Corporation. Mary was certainly Daddy's little girl. Well, this family has seen its share of tragedy recently. What is it, 2 years ago Frank Marst and his wife Ellen died in a skiing accident over in Europe? Then Frank's will hands over the family business to Mary, only to have her nearly die in a car accident. She suffered second and third degree burns all over her body. I don't think she was expected to live, and that was over a year ago.
Well, you gotta hand it to her. She always defied expectations. She was pretty tough.
So tough, maybe someone just got tired of waiting. Mary's hospice nurse and her stepsister Jane Barrett found her like this. I'll let you guys go to work. If you need anything, you know where to find me.
Okay, partner. Ready when you are. So once we've processed the scene, we'll call Robbins and arrange for the body to be transferred to the coroner's office. We'll get a better look at the body at autopsy. Have you ever seen one of these before? It's a device used with an IV to monitor a patient's dosage of medication. So it looks as though if Mary were experiencing some pain, she could just push this little button here, and the regulator would release a dose of morphine into her IV. You see this? There's a serial number right along the broken seam here. So if we put these pieces back together at the lab, we should be able to read it. Bottle of morphine. So there has to be a switch inside that regulator unit which prevents a patient from overdosing. Now that's an excellent print. Shoe impressions, left in mud. The mud's still moist, fresh. These muddy footprints have a very distinct tread. We should compare these footprints to the ones we pulled from the next room. Look like anyone you know? Maybe not. This bust is of the late Frank Marst, Mary's father. Looks like it's made of solid bronze. That's good. We'll be able to compare those marks back at the lab. Not bad for a preliminary assessment. What's next? Excuse us, miss. We're at the Las Vegas Crime Lab. We'd like to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. Starting with your name, please.
I'm Pauline Liu. I'm Mary's hospice nurse. But I suppose you might have been able to guess that from the uniform.
Miss Barrett, we're with the Las Vegas Crime Lab. I know you're upset, but we'd like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind.
Of course, officers. Whatever I can do to help.
Thank you for your time, Miss Barrett. We'd like it if you could remain here in Las Vegas until we have a better idea of what happened to your stepsister, okay?
All right, officers. Whatever you think is best.
I'll call Robbins, tell him to send somebody down here to pick up the body. And I'll make sure the officers hold the scene for us, just in case we need to come back here. So, the print on the bottle matches Jane Barrett. It says here she was arrested 6 months ago as part of a Death with Dignity demonstration in Carson City.
What evidence do you have? Prints on the bottle of morphine belong to Ms. Barrett? Well, until Doc Robbins gives us the results of the autopsy, we can't even think about a warrant. But maybe Ms. Barrett will come in here voluntarily to answer some more questions. No harm in asking her, right?
Thank you for coming in voluntarily, Miss Barrett.
Of course, officers. I'm happy to help with your investigation. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant today. I did change her morphine when it ran out during my visit last week.
All right. Now we should be able to read the serial number. I'd collect those bits of metal, too. They weren't part of the regulator. That's almost 100% bronze. Okay, so this pretty much backs up what Jane Barrett told us. She was home in Los Angeles last night. Pretty solid alibi. It's a match. That bronze trace we found in the broken regulator pieces came from that bronze bust of Frank Marst. The evidence suggests someone took the bust from the front room and used it to break open the regulator. Then they removed the morphine control inside. Then the murderer pushed the button on the regulator to give Mary an overdose of morphine. If Mary was awake, she would have been forced to lie there and see it all happen. Helpless. Same tread, same size. So whoever passed by the bronze bust of Frank Marst also approached Mary Marst in her bed. That's the record of Mary Marst's morphine usage. Take a look at the line of continuous usage during the last entry. I'd be surprised if that's not our cause of death right there. You may have something there. Jane comes to visit every Sunday, and every Sunday Mary's morphine usage becomes erratic. The records from Jane's security system indicate there was one Sunday when she stayed home. Now, don't you think it's odd she didn't happen to mention that one Sunday to us? It's also not reflected in Mary's pattern of morphine usage. It doesn't contradict Jane's alibi, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind.
Hey, Robin's here. Sorry if I slowed you down any, but I was finally able to determine your victim's time of death. You're looking at somewhere around 11 p.m. last night. Why don't you meet me in the morgue when you're ready, and we can go over the rest of the autopsy results. Thanks for waiting. Ms. Marst's previous injuries, which resulted in extensive hypertrophic scarring, made my job a lot more challenging than I'd expected. I'm sorry if I've slowed you down any. Scar tissue here is extensive, as well as hypertrophic. That's the shard I told you about.
Looks like an acetone and some hydrogen cyanide combined into fibers of an ethyl methacrylate monomer and bonded with a similar but complex polymer of transparent thermoplastic. It's a tiny piece of a cosmetic fingernail. I wonder, when was the last time Nurse Lou had her nails done?
Based on what evidence? What if we do this? I'll talk to the nurse. See if she might be willing to come down here voluntarily to answer some questions. Maybe we'll get lucky.
Nurse Lou, we appreciate you coming down here voluntarily to answer some questions.
You're welcome. I don't think there's any more I can tell you, but I'd like to help you if I can. That's odd. Oh, but you know, I did get a nail tip put on my index finger when the real one broke last week. It's been on my hand all week, so I guess I kind of forgot about it. But you can see it's not chipped or anything.
Thank you, nurse. We may call you in if more questions come up.
I understand.
That must be our man. Right where Mary's nurse said he'd be. Good idea. We can use the microscope to compare the mold against any prints we find. John Barrett, we're with the Las Vegas Crime Lab.
Okay. Do you think I'm going to need my lawyer?
We're looking into the death of Mary Marst, and we'd like to ask you some questions.
I didn't do it. What else do you need to know? Yeah, give me a call. We'll grab a drink or something.
The size and the tread patterns match. Our suspect was wearing these shoes. We need to talk to Brass. The size and the tread patterns match. Our suspect was wearing these shoes. We need to talk to Brass.
What do you got in the way of evidence? This is good. We can get a warrant to search the kid's room with this. Problem we have now is it's Sunday, which means the judge is indisposed on one of several possible golf courses. I'll have to chase him down to get the warrant to search John Barrett's room. Why don't you head back to the lab? I'll call you when I have it.
You recognize him? This is a statue of St. Ambrose, patron saint of beekeepers. The statue belongs to Beatrice Salazar. At least it belonged to her back in 1982. That dried blood there belonged to her husband, Miami drug lord Humberto Salazar. The theory goes Humberto Salazar fell in love with a beautiful teenage prostitute he plucked off the streets of Mexico City. She got the house, the car, and the drug empire. He got St. Ambrose to the head. At the time, nobody could find any physical evidence to tie Salazar to her husband's murder, but obviously, we've come a long way since 1982. And that's where you guys come in. Salazar's grandstanding when she showed up the other day was just for show. Her DNA has been on file for a while.
What are these white, pasty flecks?
Adhesive from an evidence locker sticker. I just need you guys to pull her DNA off this statue, and if you can, that's the ball game. We've got her for murder.
Nothing to collect here. Nice job. Now let's run the sample.
Wait, what's going on?
I'm not sure. Somehow, proteins got denatured. Cooked.
They're useless. Son of a bitch. What the hell happened?
It doesn't make any sense. The concentration of sodium lauryl sulfate is way too high. But I was standing right there beside you. I saw you prepare the sample correctly.
Damn it, I can't believe this. I'm taking this statue back into my custody, and I'm going to make a formal request to the deputy director and to your sheriff that an investigation be immediately conducted into the C.S.I.'s possible malfeasance. Mr. Stokes, I would suggest you take this matter into your own hands before it brings down this entire lab. Tell me something. Are you just incompetent, or did you just deliberately destroy potential evidence?
I know this sounds crazy, but I think Agent Huntley set us up. I think he deliberately set us up so that we would consume that potential DNA sample in analysis. And he wanted us to take the fall for it. Catherine, we got to get our hands back on that statue. We need to analyze whatever traces on it, and we have to figure out what the hell's going on with Huntley.
Huntley just left the building, and he took the statue with him. I'll notify the FBI field office. See if they can help us. I think Nick is right. And I'll do everything in my power to get that statue back here and have you retested. But until we can get this thing totally resolved, I think it's best for the credibility of the lab if I keep you off any cases pertaining to Beatrice Salazar. I understand you have another case you're handling right now. I recommend the two of you keep working on it.
It's Brass. I finally tracked down the judge and got him to review and sign our search warrant for John Barrett's bedroom. It's a go.
Brass had a hell of a time getting this search warrant. Let's not waste it. Stay sharp. Perks of the job, right? This guy may be rich, but lucky for us, he obviously doesn't pay for a daily maid service. Look what we have here. Cosmetic fingernail, which looks as though it's fallen off, and taken a bit of the real nail with it. The man likes his shoes. Mud on the shoes looks like it hasn't dried. It's fresh. Dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Hopefully we'll be able to recover some usable DNA. If we're lucky, we'll find out if she had a partner. That sample may allow us to positively identify who the nail belongs to. Well, hello. It's always the naughty nurse, right? Not only does Pauline Lou have a work card because she's been a dancer at various gentlemen's clubs around town, but she also has an arrest for solicitation on her record. Looks like John and Nurse Lou didn't want us to know about their little relationship. Do you want to tell Brass, or should I? Looks like John and Nurse Lou didn't want us to know about their little relationship. Do you want to tell Brass, or should I? Okay, so, not only is Nurse Lou a stripper with a rap sheet, she lied to us about the fake fingernail. So that piece of cosmetic fingernail that we found in the skin of Mary's hand belongs to her nurse. She lied to us. I wish I could say I was surprised.
What evidence do you have? Pauline, Lou, and John Barrett were lovers. Great. So I'd call that motive, wouldn't you? So let me get this straight. John Barrett stands to inherit a fortune. His girlfriend, the nurse, provides him with an alibi, and lucky for her, vice versa. And on top of that, her intimate knowledge of the regulator unit gives the kid a great big opportunity for murder.
Looks like John Barrett doesn't seem too interested in providing an alibi for anyone, including Pauline and Lou.
Okay, let's not tip our hand here. If we try and talk to John Barrett first, his lawyers might circle him and the nurse. But if we call the nurse in here first, then maybe she'll be willing to make a deal and give up her boyfriend.
I'm very confused by this situation. I've tried to be very cooperative. Have I done something wrong?
Pauline, we found your DNA on a cosmetic fingernail.
That's right. You know what? When I first broke my nail, I put on a different replacement. But I didn't apply it right, so then I put this one on. In fact, I didn't even put this one on. The woman who does my nails did. But I don't see why any of this matters, because that was all like a week ago.
That's all for now. Thank you. Well, no one will ever accuse you of not being thorough. I'd say you might be overdoing it a little bit, but it never hurts to practice, right? Okay, here's that little puppet Pauline was talking about. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's just really hard to believe this would mean so much to Mary's brother. Petroleum oil with a very low ash content. Looks like the type of two-stroke oil you'd use in jet skis. Good job, partner. You proved that pool of motor oil is absolutely a pool of motor oil. So here's what's bugging me. Every time Jane comes to visit, Mary all of a sudden has this wildly unpredictable pattern of morphine dosing. And I just couldn't put my finger on what was gnawing at me. What could Mary possibly be thinking? And then it hit me. If you were to take Mary's erratic pattern and filter it through the computer as a Morse code pattern, did you see Mary's final message right before she died? J-A-Y-N. Morse code has been in use for over 160 years. It only ceased to be an international standard for maritime communication in 1999. And for some reason, I remember when the French Navy ceased using Morse code in 97. The final message transmitted was, "Calling all. This is our last cry for our eternal silence." Let's go talk to Brass.
What do you got in the way of evidence? I mean, this isn't exactly a smoking gun. Jane Barrett may have had opportunity, but as far as we can tell, she hasn't got a motive. Now, our little John and Nurse Lou, they have motive. I'll see what I can do, but now that John's more willing to cooperate, why don't we talk to him and see if he lets something slip?
Look, officers, this is a really terrible time for me right now. I'm sorry for lashing out at you. I realize you're just doing your job. I lied to you about one thing. If someone did this to Mary, I want to know who. I'll help you. In any way I can. Ask me whatever questions you need.
The tread of this shoe is the same size and pattern as the shoe impression we collected from the crime scene. I gotta say, it doesn't look so good for John.
What do you need from me?
Same size and brand of shoe, with mud on them, right where John told us they'd be. Okay, now the trick is to distinguish one pair of muddy shoes from the other. Good catch. That's a very fine strand of hair. Appearances can be so deceiving, can't they? That's Jane Barrett's hair. You know what? That crime scene was staged. We need to talk to Brass. The shoe impressions we collected at the crime scene match the treads of the shoes we recovered from the boat. These are the shoes the killer wore. The shoe impressions we collected at the crime scene match the treads of the shoes we recovered from the boat. These are the shoes the killer wore.
Based on what evidence? The DNA evidence puts Jane Barrett right at the crime scene. I'll get your warrant.
I don't understand. Why am I being brought in like this?
Miss Barrett, we found your DNA at a location which ties you to Mary's murder.
That's not possible. I gave you my home security system records. I wasn't even in Las Vegas. I was home. This has to be some kind of mistake. Didn't you check with the security company?
That's exactly what we did, Miss Barrett.
You, and everyone we talked to, mentioned how you would always pay Mary a visit every Sunday. But when we reviewed your home security records, we noticed one Sunday when your system listed you as home all day.
I have an explanation. That is,
May we see your phone, Miss Barrett?
I'm going to get a search warrant for your home in Los Angeles, Miss Barrett. I'm going to have LAPD turn over the place and tell me exactly what they find.
May I save you the trouble, Captain? You won't find anything there. You have no case. Just because I wasn't home doesn't mean I murdered my stepsister. That's actually quite a remarkable leap of imagination. And I would guess those don't usually play very well in front of a jury.
I just heard back from the LAPD. They searched Jane Barrett's Lost Hills residence from top to bottom. Found nothing. Look, maybe Jane didn't want to risk traveling around with incriminating evidence on her, so she stashed it around here somewhere. All I'm saying is, it's worth looking into.
This smudge wasn't on her phone earlier. It's not sticky, it's viscous, like oil. It's petroleum oil with a very low ash content. Looks like the type of two-stroke oil you'd use in jet skis. The chemical impurities in both oil samples match, which means we can put Jane at the lake very recently, but why would she go down there? Unless maybe she was trying to hide something from us. I think we're going to need something to search below ground as well as above.
Ah, yes. The ultrasound device. It's impressive. But it's also expensive. Let's just be sure we really need it before we start wasting valuable resources. This evidence places Jane Barrett in proximity to that pool of motor oil. Okay. I'll get you that ultrasound device. Let's see if we can find out why she was there.
So this is what Jane was trying to hide. A hammer. She buried the hammer right on top of a wrench, which looks as though it's been down there for a while. Looks like some kind of softer metal got embedded in the pitting on the hammerhead. These particles are bronze, and they're a perfect match to the bronze that the bust is made out of. The bronze particles didn't come off by smashing the regulator. Someone deliberately shaved them off and planted them. So our killer wanted us to make the connection to the bust, and wanted to make sure we found those muddy footprints right by it. And he or she assumed that if we did, our focus would turn to John and Pauline. Jane Barrett's fingerprint is on the hammer used to smash the regulator. I'd really like to hear what Jane Barrett has to say.
You didn't find anything, did you? I tried to save you the trouble. So is that it, officers? You'll never really know, will you?
Here's your fingerprint. We found it on the hammer you buried by the lake.
The same hammer you used to knock off a piece of that bust. The one you planted with the broken regulator.
I'm just curious, Jane. Why the bust of Mary's father? Did you resent the Marst family that much?
I hated them. Hated them for stealing my family from me. You know, when my parents died in that oh-so-tragic skiing accident, it made me start believing that there was the possibility of justice in this world. Like God had answered my prayers and punished them for abandoning me. But then Mary took over the company. She was just a stupid little party girl, and there was nothing I could do about it. But as soon as Mary resigned, that very night, I was ready. God really does help those who help themselves. Mary survived her accident, which upset me. Why was God punishing me? But I planned to try again, and that's when I bought that application for my phone so I would be able to create an alibi. But you know, I realized I could just watch Mary die, bit by bit. It was then that I completely understood God's plan for me. I wasn't being punished. I was being rewarded. And then one day, I found John standing over Mary, crying and begging her not to die because she was the only family he had left. But I'm his real sister. That very day, I snuck into John's room to find something that would lead you to him and his naughty nurse. I took a chip of her fingernail from the trash in his room. Then yesterday, I used my phone to make it look like I was home. Then I drove to Vegas. It only takes about 4 hours. In the right car, that is. I went down to the family boat, put on my gloves, got John's muddy shoes, and drove to the chalet. I waited for my brother and his whore to go to his room, and then I snuck in. I put on the shoes and took the bronze bust from the front room. As soon as she saw me, Mary started panicking, pushing her regulator button over and over and over. Do you need some help with that, Mary? I cracked open Mary's regulator with the bust, then used the hammer to chip off a bit of it. That part was for you guys to find. Then, and this was the best part, I put the broken regulator in Mary's hands and I forced her to push the button. I looked into her terrified eyes to watch the morphine melt her soul away. And then, she almost wrecked it. She looked at me, and she smiled at me. She was trying to trick me, make me think she was glad to die, like this was what she'd wanted all along, as if God was freeing her, not me. After she was dead, I planted that tiny bit of the fake fingernail on her hand. I replaced the bust, returned the shoes to the boat, and buried the hammer. Then I drove home. I got back just in time to catch my flight.
You might be right, Jane. Mary may have been happy to finally be released of her burden. Or maybe she was smiling because she'd been able to spell out most of your name on her regulator right before she passed. I think she was smiling because she knew you weren't going to get away with murder.
Well, we'll never know for sure now, will we?
I do know one thing for sure, Miss Barrett. You may have been neglected by your family, but we're going to be paying a lot of attention to you now, probably for the next 25 years to life.
Very good work, you two. A confession is always a nice bonus in a case like this one.
Technically, 2 confessions. One for last night's murder, and another for last year's attempted murder.
You keeping score, Nicky?
I just think my partner here deserves full credit for chalking up 2 scores. And I think it should go a long way towards breaking up that cloud hanging over the team because of Huntby.
You let me worry about Huntby.
I'm telling you, Catherine, he's dirty.
Good night, Nicky.